Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode. I am Durga Prasad Karatu, Salesforce consultant. Today we are continuing our journey into Salesforce Data Cloud. In the last episode, we covered data mapping. Today we are going to take the next step into Data Cloud, data unification using identity resolution. Let's dive in. Identity resolution. Identity resolution is the process in which we will be bringing data from different sources to create a complete view of our customers or accounts. As part of the identity resolution process, we will be using the match and reconciliation rules in order to create a unified profile. Now, let us discuss about the implementation steps for identity resolution process. As part of the first step, before we start the matching, we need to understand whatever profile information which we brought into the data cloud is ingested successfully, and we have harmonized the data in the data cloud. We need to validate using the Data Explorer tool and understand that. In the step 2, we need to configure the match rules. These match rules will link the records together. The more the number of fields in the match rules, the stricter will be the matching criteria. The lesser the number of fields, the chances of getting a unified record created will be easy. Step 3, reconciliation rules. These rules help when there is conflicting information between the matched records. We will be able to choose which works best for our needs and mix and match if necessary. Once we have set up the match rules and reconciliation rules and identity resolution job is published, the final step is to validate the results that are generated by our identity resolution process. In the identity resolution summary, we will be able to understand how our records are merged and what is the consolidation rate. These results will allow us to understand whether the records are merged appropriately or not. Now let us understand the identity resolution process. Earlier, we have ingested the data from our data sources into the data cloud. We have the data lake objects and data model objects where our information is stored. Identity resolution requires the profile objects in order to create a unified record. These can be individual account or party identification. We should have at least one contact point object. Once we have the data model objects, we need to create the identity resolution process. In the identity resolution process, we have rule sets. Each rule set comprises of match rules and reconciliation rules. Using the match rules, identity resolution will be able to create the unified profiles. Either these can be based on the exact or normalized or fuzzy. Similarly, reconciliation rules are nothing but what exactly is the field value that should be appearing in our unified record. Either that can be the most occurring value or last updated value or the source priority value. Once our identity resolution process is completed, a unified record will be created. This unified record comprises of the information related to individual as well as contact point objects information. This is how identity resolution process creates unified profile. Now, let us understand about the identity resolution objects. Identity resolution utilizes various objects during the unified profile creation. Identity resolution requires data model objects which are related to profile. That can be an individual account or party identification, and it requires at least one contact point object. And also identity resolution process creates various unified objects like unified individual, unified account, unified contact point, unified party identification to store the information relevant to the unified record individual or unified account or unified contact point. Whenever an identity resolution process creates a unified record, system will store the information in unified link objects. Unified link objects are very important as unified link objects will store the information how our unified objects are created. For suppose, unified link individual object will store the information related to how a unified individual is created, like what individual records are combined in order to create a unified individual. Let's walk through a practical example of creating identity resolution process for our fictional company Techron Group. Once we have logged into the org, click on the Data Model tab and select the View as Graph View and check for the relationship between the profile objects like the individual and contact point objects. Once we have validated the relationships between our profile objects, click on the Identity Resolution tab and select New. Select Create New Rule Set, click on Next. You can leave the data space as default and select the primary data model object as individual. Click on Next. Give a rule set name. I'll be naming it as e-bikes. In the rule set output objects, you will be able to see the list of the data model objects that are going to be used and created as part of the identity resolution process. Click on Save. Once our rule set is created, here under the rule set properties, we have two different sections, match rules and reconciliation rules. In order to create a unified profile, we need to configure the match rules. Let us click on the configure. Now, in order to configure our first match rule, click on configure and select fuzzy first name, normalized phone and normalized email. Click on next. You can modify the precision or the match method how you wanted to merge the records. We have various precisions that we can define to create our unified profile. For now, I'm leaving everything as is and click on next. Let us add one more match rule. Here, let us create a custom rule. As we have the birth date, let us select the individual data model object and select the birth date field and match method as exact. And let us add few more criterias, contact point email, email address, and exact normalized. And lastly, let us add individual first name and select fuzzy medium precision. Click on next. Click on save. Now let us configure the reconciliation rules. Let us change the contact point email to source priority, and we are going to use the CRM email address as the priority email address. Click on save. Once the match rules and reconciliation rules are created, system will kickstart the identity resolution job. Once our identity resolution process is successful, we will be able to see the last job status as successed. Let us click on the rule set name and see how many unified profiles were created. There were around 496 total unified profiles and the consolidation rate is 12%. There are no anonymous unified profiles. Now, let us go and check what are the unified records that are created. Click on the Data Explorer and select the data model object. Select the unified individual data model object and edit the columns and add the unified individual to the selected column list, as we will require the unified individual column, and pick one ID and open the Profile Explorer. Select the default data space and select the unified individual and select the attribute as unified individual and paste the unified individual. You can click on view in order to understand how this unified individual record is created. Right now, I have configured the profile page for this unified individual. You can click on the gear icon and click on the edit page. Drag and drop the profile related record information to understand how this unified individual record is created. In this case, Jessica Blocker is having two individual records and two individual contact point email records, which were merged to create a unified record. In the unified record, we are having the person name, birth date, as well as unified individual ID and photo URL, last name, first name, and other information. This is how a unified individual record is created. In order to check the unified individual records, there is one more way. We can leverage the calculated insights to do that, as well as we can use the query editor in order to understand how our unified individual records are created. We will explore the query editor and calculated insights in our upcoming sessions. Let's have a quick recap of key takeaways. Always make sure to check the profile objects information is properly ingested and harmonized in the data cloud. And it is best to have a solid strategy for the unification process, how exactly and effectively the identity resolution process to create a unified record. After the unification process is completed, utilize the summary screen in order to understand whether our results are aligning with our expectations or not. Finally, create different rule sets to see how they affect the consolidation rate. Testing the rule sets will help us to understand how the data is effectively merged. And that's a wrap up for today's episode on identity resolution. In our upcoming episodes, we will explore more features of Data Cloud. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our Salesforce Chronicles YouTube channel for more updates. Thanks for watching and stay tuned.